Oh, maybe you might get it for like a.
I'm like, you might just want to let.
Um,
know.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Andy. Let's go ahead and get our City of North Plains City Council regular session meeting for Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 at 7:01. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That much better.
Yeah.
All right, roll call, please. Lori?
Thank you. Counselor Page,
Here.
Counselor Martinez. Here. Counselor Pittman. Here. Counselor Sheldon,
Present.
Counselor Smith,
Here.
Mayor Linehan. Here. And Counselor Kendall, I did not hear from, did you?
I spoke to him this morning, and I knew it was a possibility that he might not.
Okay.
So. Item six on our agenda is for public comment. At this time, is there, Lori, any public comment presented?
I did not receive any prior to the meeting.
Okay, and please note that there's no one here in the hall to give public comment, and it looks like no one online as well, correct? Okay. Item number 7, budget committee applicants. So it looks like we have 2 folks who have come forward and submitted an application. Yep, I'm good. So we have Chris Barron and Iris Bonfiglio, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm out of sorts, but I don't have a piece of paper. Thank you, Councilor Martinez. I really appreciate that. So we do have a consent agenda that we do need to approve. We have 2 items, obviously tonight's agenda, February 21st, and we also have the approval of the February 6th, 2023 City Council minutes. Are there any corrections or additions that we need to be aware of for the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion. I'll move the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, there's a first and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. Item 6, we've already addressed the public comment. There's no one wishing to speak on matters not on the agenda. And recognized at this time. And then item 7 is the budget committee applicants. So we have 2 applicants listed in our packet. We have Chris Barron, I believe. Chris has currently has served on the budget committee, correct?
No, he's on the economic development.
Economic Development Committee.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. And then Iris Bonfiglio, and it's noted that neither one of them are here this evening.
No, they were both got an email last week to come on. And
Okay,
so
all right. Any questions for Andy regarding the applicants? Councilor Page?
I'm just probably.
just one left. This is gonna
One's
fill,
left.
just gonna fill it out. Yes. Well, yeah.
So, any other questions or comments? All right, is there, anybody care to, make a motion for nomination for the committee?
Since there's only one spot. And we should so by resume and also. We're going to have the to show up and such. Being that Chris is already part of the economic committee and nobody shows up, I need to appoint Chris Rivera.
Is there a second for Chris Barron. All second for Christopher Barron. All right, we have a first and a second. Is there any other nominations that we want to put out there? I mean, we have two nominations, I'm sorry, but anyone else feel the need or have any discussion on the other applicant? No discussion. We have a first and a second, then for Chris Barron. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. Tonight is our staff report night, and as usual, we get to start with Robin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Lenahan and councilors. I'm pleased to report that last Wednesday, the library board had the opportunity to interview a new board candidate who's inside the city limits, and you'll see on your next council packet a recommendation from the library board to appoint Dan Juliana to our board. And we also have an outstanding application for our final spot in the city limits. That candidate happens to be out of town this month, but will attend our March library board meeting for an interview, and that is very on phone. So we will have a complete library board, hopefully. And you've seen my report. We have a newer iteration of our statistics. I think it looks a lot more clear. I'd love to know what you think of it, and if you have any questions about my report.
Any questions, council? I appreciate your report and the clarity. I'm sorry. Councilor Smith.
Just a brief one. I noticed on our meeting last weeks ago, we had some new residents coming in from India. So I'm feeling North Avenue. Probably see quite a few. I did look up and they do have 3 different holidays that they have. It'd be a good idea. Maybe do a
Recognize Indian holidays.
holiday, just one of these.
Yeah, we do typically have some displays and materials in the library for various holidays that are celebrated in our community, including our Indian residents. And so, yes, feel free to send me an email with specific ones you're interested in. But we do typically recognize a variety of holidays in the library.
Okay. Thanks. I feel like we're going to see quite a few.
Councilor Page.
I want to commend Ricky Smith for putting it out. And to get the diversity of time being welcome. Thanks for bringing it up. Totally didn't see it. Thanks. I noticed that the library did, you know, standard that they did $200 in online sales cover, which is 8 times more than November, and 3 times more than December. What was the big seller?
Well, our current library board is stepping down, or sorry, our current Friends of the Library Board is stepping down, and they have actively recruited new members, potential board members, and active volunteers. And so we have a rejuvenated volunteer pool who are doing online sales led by Susan Brown, who I'd like to recognize, who is nominated to be the new Friends of the Library president come July. And they've just been asking for donations and listing everything on the online sales, preparing for a summer book sale also, and just doing really well. It's just been re-energized, that fundraising, which, you know, we really, it's really great for the library to have a strong fundraising organization.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you know if they are accessing a different platform or anything for their stands? No?
Some were a little underutilized in the last few years, so they're kind of, just boosting up the amount of listing on the two main platforms are eBay and Amazon.
Any other questions?
Mayor. Don't know, I'll cede time to anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just want to, that's a great point about the Indian South Asian holidays. And I do know the library tries to sort of highlight a few of those every year. We've even done a Diwali celebration in years past. So then COVID happened. So getting back into any ways we can recognize those, they do a great job of doing that. I also want to commend Robin for, speaking of the Friends, working with NEPA to try to co-locate two events here at the same time, the Garlic Festival, because the book sale is a major fundraiser for the library. And I'll get to it in a minute. I'll get to why it's kind of more important this year. But I know NEPA had worked on having an OMSI program here for kids and things like that on one of the days. So they were able to work out an agreement today to share the space. More people in here for the OMSI event will probably mean more book sales too. So it's a great kind of partnership there. So I'm glad they were able to work that out. You'll see in Robin's staff reports that the county is looking, they're going through some budget challenges, and they had a town hall. I think it's next on the 26th. Is it tonight?
It's
This week?
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. It's online, virtual. And I went to one of their budget presentations. Bill and I did actually last week. And so the WCCLS, the library levy contribution will remain intact, but the way the county distributes the portion to the WCCLS partner libraries is the county's general fund picks up 60% of that amount that goes towards it. The levy amount that's passed by voters is 40%. That goes to all the member libraries, all 13 or 14. That one will remain untouched. It's the general fund portion that makes up 60% of what we get that to our particular library. That's what's going to be under consideration for areas that the county is looking to cut back on some expenses. They're looking at 4%, 7%, 10% cost reductions in every department. Library and the portion that goes to our member libraries will definitely be part of that equation. So that's a little worrying for us. As you can see in there, they consider flat funding. We're used to getting a 3% increase every year. That kind of correlates to your annual assessment, 3% assessed value. Under consideration now is 0%. So flat funding from this previous year. That means we're losing out on $6,000 to $8,000 of what we're otherwise budgeting. So a couple things. Friends of the Library book sales are even more important to help fill that gap. And also, if you want to participate, contact a commissioner or anything like that, just let them know that libraries are important. People pass a library levy, and I think residents and all of those that participate in supporting a levy at 87% expects that our libraries are going to be fully funded. And this to me it's a bit of a problem. And for North Plains in particular, we fund our library at a larger share of our own costs than any other library. So we take an even bigger hit because our margins are smaller. Almost half of our library's operating budget is from the city's general fund. So just a few points there as the county's figuring these things out. Robin and the staff do a great job with their budget. It's kind of times like these, it's good to have the expenditure control budgeting. If we have any savings from the previous year, we can roll those in like an enterprise fund, but still, we count on having those increases from WCCLS every year. So that's just something we'll be discussing more during the budget season. So.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome, Robin.
Good reporting.
Question? Robin, how many of the new members do you have? Or what did you start with and what do you have now?
Members, you mean the Friends?
Yeah, what all this new online, Susan Brown.
Oh, yeah. I think we recruited a projected 10 additional active volunteers for the Friends.
Would that be because of you?
I mean, I think the current board, you know, worked hard to
Okay.
send out a letter. I've certainly also worked hard to attend their meetings and, offer my cooperation and give information, so, hopefully I was a part of that, but, I think, you know, the current board and now Susan are really leading the charge on that.
Well, that's great. So they're young, like 25, 30, most of them. You gotta-
They're very capable.
Diplomatic.
Because when I was late, I was speaking in my recliner, so you need young people to do this. Thank you.
They got strong backs, carry a lot of books.
Any other comments or questions? Thanks, Robin. All right, I think Chief.
Good evening. It looks like, in January there, we had 260 calls, that, the officers either responded to or self-initiated on. And that's, our public demand calls are right in the average, for January, so that's good. There really was no recurring trends. You guys may have heard that, the big call of the month was the bank getting, its ATM broken into, so that's, the nice thing is with our DSO detectives are working on that, but I don't have any updates for it, but, that did get passed on to them, so based on the dollar amount that was taken and the bank stuff, so. We've got one of our detectives working on that. Other than that, there were 74 hours of overtime. And you can see, you can look for what the calls were and kind of how they did. Looks like really, that we only had like 4 public demand calls in that time at night, but so other than that, that's really about it. Pretty slow month for January. We are scheduling, there's a typo on there because it kind of changed the date this morning, but Wednesday, March 29th is when we're gonna have the public safety town hall at 6. So so that's in your packet. Was the first date that got changed, but it hasn't been sent out in the newsletter or anything, but it will be posted here. That is really what I have.
6 o'clock or
Yeah, 6 o'clock,
6 o'clock?
6 p.m. on Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. That's the goal. I don't believe it's going to get changed again, so that's basically been written in stone at this point. So, any questions with the report?
Counselor Smith, Counselor Payton.
I just got a small one. The new four-way stop,
The one up there on North.
how's that going?
Honestly, it's pretty good. Again, I see it during the daytime. Like anything at night, maybe it's getting ran a lot more. I was joking because it seemed like I stopped a bunch of teachers. They're going to, from the school, which is kind of funny, but that just shows that people have its own brain in their head they're just, on autopilot getting to work, and I'm sure we're all guilty of that. So.
Yeah, I've heard there was one riprap that you caught.
Maybe. But it was pretty good. So, I think, Public Works did a great job of putting out some sign, the signs ahead, to include an actual additional middle of the intersection sign, to help people stop. And I think we're getting pretty close to removing those and just, making it a normal forward stop. But we're still, my plan with that is I'm still just warning folks, and I know we're working on the evening as well. So they're just getting warnings for now. Until it becomes a normal occurrence. I'm excited for when the new four-way stop comes up on the main direction, commercial and main. That's what I'm excited for. So, but so far that intersection's been really good, and I think it's. Again, I firmly believe it was needed. Some people were almost stopping there anyway. So it's a nice traffic measure to slow down some traffic. So.
I'm gonna check, is there lights in that area so people are able to see the stop signs in that intersection?
Gotta be honest, I don't work at night. And it's
Yes.
starting to be daylight, but
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what
Yeah,
the lighting.
intersection.
Counselor Payton.
For the Columbia Bank, ATM, do we know what time frame that was it during like coverage hours or non-coverage hours potentially?
I believe that was like between 5:30 and 6. That was early in the morning, which would have been before I come on. I come on at 7, so that's in that time frame. There's no coverage right now.
Thank you.
And in case you're wondering, I'm guessing that's not just a random ATM thing. There's folks, I think those folks are doing this. I don't know if you've read in the papers in Portland that this is kind of something that's it's like a criminal enterprise that they're doing. It's not just a one-off, like, okay, someone just decided to do this. So it's probably some folks that know what they're doing. ATMs are not exactly.
It's 6 in the morning. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. If there's no questions, then the only last thing, the alibi, the last thing that I had is, I've been saying it before, but you guys know Deputy Conway, she's here. This is her last city council meeting, and that she's moving on to detective. I'd sure like her to come up here and give a speech. Maybe not so much a speech, but I would like her to come up here because,
Oh my gosh, Lori. You're gonna make me sad.
Dad, we're sad.
So you guys all know this way better than I do. She wasn't here right at the contract, obviously, when we became contract sheriff's office, but she was the first selected, one of the two. The other one will be nameless, but Conway was here at the very beginning when we got the contract. So,
3.5 years.
yeah, I have here September to March, September of 2019 to March 23. Throughout, you've been fantastic. It's been a pleasure to supervise you for the most part. But throughout, you've been fantastic, and I think you've really embraced community policing, which you came from Aloha, which isn't as much community policing. So for those that don't know, it's a completely different. It shouldn't be, but it is. It's different working in Aloha than it is coming to North Plains, and it's like she said. It's totally different when people get angry at you because you don't wave. That's not what we're used to. So it's pretty fantastic. And you've done a really great job. It'd be nice if like everybody.
Okay, I just wanted the dogs.
Like bring you home. That'd be nice. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here, I get a plaque.
Pretty.
Thank you very much for all that you've done. Again, really made my life.
You're welcome.
The most important thing is to take care of you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. In the microwave? Well, it's been an honor, so thank you all so much. Everything's fine. Cough, don't cry, it's fine. But honestly, I was welcomed here and I learned a lot and I'm gonna miss everybody. So I'll come back, Kingport is still here. I'm excited to see what happens in the next 5-10 years for North Plains. There's a lot of amazing things that have happened in this community. It's been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve the city of North Plains, and I just thank you all so much. I'm gonna insult the dogs.
I think our dogs and our cats would really miss you.
I'll come say hi to them.
Please come and be posted on Instagram. From the council.
Thank you.
This is for me, speaking of cats and dogs, it's very appropriate. I think you enjoy that. But I just want to say how grateful I am when you work with you and the climate track and I think, you know, when you came on board and just to be, it was so exciting to see a woman in uniform in North Plains, right? And I like Stephen a lot, but you know, it just made me like really excited because you know, if you don't see, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of little girls and little boys were
lot of little girls saw you and said, you know, maybe I want to be a police officer, or something, right? And you embrace the children and the families, and they're not afraid of you, right? And so I really appreciate that you embrace our community and our community embrace you. And then you know, you came here and you brought your smile and your joy and your happiness, and I know that you guys hard. And I know and you're home safe every time. I know like I appreciate the leadership in our community, and I know that people are willing to miss you. And just, you know, just your positive attitude. I mean, obviously the staff is really improved. I enjoy working next to you and with you. I know the council has embraced you, and this is home. So this is your home forever and ever. So you're always welcome, and please come back and see us and keep us apprised of what you're doing. And I will honestly with dogs and cats.
Thanks. Smiling.
No, they smell too good. I'm like, I should share.
And that's all sorry.
All right. Next up is community planning, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I don't really have anything new to report for you. I guess I'm here tonight more to answer any questions you may have. As you know, there's some controversial issues going on over at Springfield that Amy and I are working through. So I thought you may have questions on some of that. So I wanted to be here to help with any of those questions. I know that people have also been asking about the Far West application. So I can update anybody on that tonight as well. In addition to that, you know, I've already shared with you that we have some folks that are interested in the West Piston building. They've purchased that, so we're working with them on trying to get that open and operating as soon. So they're kind of putting together a plan on how that works for me. We have been in contact with the lady who's going to open up the Froyo business in the Roll Tide building. So it looks like that is moving forward, which is exciting. And we've also been in contact with the gentleman who's looking to open a marijuana dispensary at the Allstate building there off of Plymouth. So those are really kind of the pressing issues right now on my plate. But really, like I said, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have in regards to like planning for funds.
The Allstate building, are they looking to coexist, or is Allstate out? And I mean,
I believe Allstate is out.
so it's not the chiropractic.
No, it's not the chiropractic. We originally thought it was the chiropractic, but this is further back on the highway, but it's Allstate building that's up close to the highway. And it is my understanding, it's a very small building, only about 400 square feet, and I think he's going to use the entire building for use.
Another question I had was about the vacant lot next to the right on the corner of Cottage and Glencoe, where they just demoed the house. Is there any conversation with that landowner about that use? Because that's C1, correct?
Yes, the only conversation we have with him is to get him to get his permits to demo the building, which I would have challenged. In terms of a future use on that lot, he does not have anything planned at the moment, but he did say he's in contact with those. So he would love to, his idea is to get his debt permits or something like that there. But we don't have anything yet.
Questions? Comments?
My only question, and maybe actually more geared at Andy, because this was early in the process, but it just, when I read this a couple nights ago, I was thinking, why is that contractor not done with Cottage Street? And I'm interested because they should have been long done with that.
Yeah, they had to do the ADA ramps at 309 in Cottage twice. So they did them, I apologize, yeah, twice. They did them, 3J and inspectors went out and measured them. They didn't meet the specs. So we went back and forth. They didn't want to fix them, at least not at their cost. We had to dig our heels in and say, let's read the contract. So it took them another month or so to mobilize, come out for them again, get the inspection. They're done now. As a matter of fact, I just got the retainage release request last week. So this is, I'll be done. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Bacon?
Thank you. One easy question, is maybe you can answer this one. Do we have a preliminary spot for the radar signing for the becoming?
I'll kind of defer that to Andy. I know we do have some spots, but he's a little bit more involved with that than I am.
Okay, well, so we have 4 temporary ones on order. This will probably take 4 or 5 weeks to get here. And then just this morning, we met as a group, police and public works, about where the 4 other permanent signs will be. So 2 on commercial, 2 on north, and we kind of outlined those in a map today. But Jim can elaborate further on where those will be, but basically westbound as you come into downtown, and then eastbound as you're around the water tank, the big water tank, before folks get to Main Street would be kind of those locations. And then similarly situated on North Avenue too, probably westbound around the water quality facility where the basketball court is, and then eastbound in front of the school. I think that's that way. And having breaking up both of those roads now with stop signs will help a lot, because it won't just be a 1 mile long drag strip. So yeah. Did that sound right to you?
And then another question I had is, do we have any kind of update on the GOA property?
That would be a good question for Bill. But thank you for these easy ones.
We don't have an, Council Paper, we don't have an update, well, really since what we've learned in December. And in December, we talked to the developer, and they said that they would speak to us again in late January or February, after they confirmed they were able to change their team to address some costs. We haven't spoken with them since on that topic, but Andy and I were visiting about it last week, and we're going to ping them and say, hey, where are you on reforming your team and all that. So.
Okay, how about you? And then just the last 2 were, if you could provide an update on the Far West, and then also with the fence situation in Grand Hill, that would be great.
Yeah. So I did speak with the Far West team last week. They are working still on addressing the incomplete letter and actually revising some of their applications for the spec warehouse building in the front portion of the property, or the south end. And so I understand that Far West owns the property, so they're working on trying to get somebody into that building, maybe even sell that spec building. It sounds like they're much closer to a tenant and the contract with that one. So now they're kind of tailoring the building specifically to their needs. So there's a few adjustments there. But their main question to me was if they could submit for the building permit for that building now, before they have land use approval, with the understanding that no permits would be issued until after land use approval is received. And the reason they asked that question is because I understand some building code changes going on with the state building code that takes effect April 1st. And so they were hoping to try and get submitted before April 1st, so they would be able to current standards, not the new standards. Andy and I talked about this at length to see, what what would be a good idea, and we determined that, you know, that, the appearance of that probably is not a good appearance for us going into such a controversial land use application. And so I shared with them that, you know, we would not sign off on them going forward this time, to submit for the building permit. Just because the optics, were not going to be too good for us, you know, with the fact. You know, so just to protect everybody and protect the integrity of the process, we probably wouldn't do that. So that's what I anticipate them getting me the updated materials very soon, probably maybe the end of this week, next week, but it sounds like they're very close to resubmitting. At that point, you know, we'll go through another continuous review to see if that new information is accurate and complete. We'll share it back with Washington County and 3J for the engineering review, and then I'll do the planning review. And then, if there is stuff that's still missing, we'll send out another incomplete letter, letting them know what else needs to come in. If it's and if it is complete, we will give you the and we'll start moving forward to hearings with the planning commission. Regarding the fencing, I'm not sure if you heard, I had an unfortunate situation last weekend that took me out of the office from Wednesday morning for the rest of the week. So Andy stepped up and helped me out with some of that while I was away. I understand he went out and met with one of the homeowners out there and talked a little bit about the situation and what, you know, what we can do currently under the code. And, it sounds like there's a lot more conversation that needs to be had, but right now the city is kind of operating under the code at this time, you know, what the code requires, and you know, what the Brimhill pattern book requires. And I'm not sure how much Andy got into the last meeting that I was on here at, but there's really kind of a convoluted mess, really. You know, before I got here, the contract kind of signed off on some site plan that showed fencing, but didn't include the heights of those fencing. And we also have the architectural pattern of the tech requirements for these homes in terms of fencing. So maybe there was an assumption there that Lennar knows and they'll fence correctly. What happened was what you see today. You know, and so we know that those fences are not what we want in terms of safety or clear vision on an alley. And at this point, we're trying to figure out how we move forward.
And just a couple follow-up questions for the Far West application. It sounds like they're getting closer to a tenant for that spec building. When they submit another land use application, do they include a traffic study at that time, or does that come later? Just trying to think about what anticipated traffic flow might look like with that spec building.
Sure, absolutely. You know, the traffic report is required on the front end, so we know what the impacts are. We can address those with the land use application. And that was one of the things that was deemed incomplete with the original incomplete. I think I may have mentioned it to you before, but they did some of their studies based on standards from Texas versus the AASHTO standards for the left turn lane. So that was one of the incomplete items we sent them, was that you need to redo that based on the AASHTO standards. And so I anticipate I'll get some type of edit income to the current report addressing that. And that's what I'll share back with Washington County and engineers for further comments.
Thank you. And then just the last question, and I'll be done. Thinking about Lennar and the fence situation. You know, again, I know I completely understand this is before your tenure here. But it sounds like someone beforehand has signed off saying, yep, this is good to go. What supersedes? Is it that sign off of that initial plan, or the code?
That's a really good question. We did that with the city's land use attorney, so we shared all that information back with them, the plans that were signed off, the code, the pattern book, and everything really. And what they said was, you know, because the pattern book says that, you know, in addition to complying with the pattern book, they have to comply with all city codes, right? And because they did not show the fence heights on that plan, we have the ability to go back and require them to meet the rigid standards for driveways. And that was the opinion we received from the land use attorney. You know, at that point, we went forward and discussed it with Lennar, thought we were going to have a little partnership there and rolling out the message. they decided to go their own route, and so that's kind of where we're at today.
So no ownership from Lennar at all on the.
I'm not sure if you've heard that they prepared a letter that they sent out to those 11 or so homeowners. It wasn't kind to the city what they had to say, but then they said, you know, we'll ultimately get you guys for it.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Smith, what do you have to say?
That's part of it. I did walk there. It looks like it's all. No, yeah, the huts. I see where the guys are putting, walkway and more fence. But it kind of matches up with what's there already. So. I can see where the homeowner buys something. And gets something different taken away from it. I'm not sure. I'm glad I don't have to deal with it.
I'm glad you know that it's not an easy situation. I'll be honest with you, and, you know, very challenging. You know, it's very unpleasant to come back on this, you know, after the fact. I don't know what our shares with them when they were purchasing the homes, but they may have over delivered in their commitments to home buyers, because when we first started talking about this, they were the ones who referred to the pattern book saying that, yeah, we're actually out of compliance with our pattern. So they've acknowledged some of this. It's not just from the city, you know. The problem is how do you bring in 11 properties where you're still trying to dig through the need to figure out if there's even something we can do to increase the safety on that alley? So we were digging through and doing our research to find out what we could do. You know, what is our standing on this? So by the time we have our answers, they came to your meeting, the last meeting, should receive their thoughts. So, like I said, it's not been an easy task. We were really hoping that Lennar would stay with us there and work through this with us, but now we're kind of at the stage we are. I like you, Marty.
Yeah, I agree with you. The feeling they have, they bought something and they save the money up and, it's an investment for them. It's a lot of money to have. It's expensive. And, I wish Lennar would have more of it. Lennar's give a big fence, people want a big fence. Easy to sell it. They're sorry. When they put your fence for it, what it costs to put the fence versus the price that you see difference from having a short fence, the amount of people actually want to have it. So, I don't know. I think the city's been in a bad spot. I hope that we're still in business with Lennar. And we should, tell them, hey, you guys should get to that. This is the guy who's getting money grab. Like, hey, we just apologize later and fix the fence, but we need to sell it to the people. We're the short fence. We're build it anyway. Not basically a question. Hopefully we're giving a message to Lennar, right?
There has been at least 4 weeks of conversations with Lennar, about how to do this.
Well, not just the technical, like which coach you are making us look bad, and we're just trying to get more money from it. Something more plain than just the technical talk about fence, just the whole holistic view of it. Exactly what I'm talking about.
Probably not totally that, but yes, I think they understand that we wanted to partner with them to roll out the message so that we're on even grounds together. There's no one above or below the next. That was the original plan, that we would deliver the message together, each accept responsibility and give their message space. They know what's wrong. They've told me a million times they know what's wrong. Their attorney said our attorney's opinion was correct, which is why they're not challenging any of this. And so they know where this whole thing sits, and they know that they are a player in this, and they know that they could do better. I want to make sure you understand that they do know.
Great. So, you can't see the forest because it's treatment, it's treated fence. It's the whole, what else is next, right? That's why.
Well, that's a great point. That's what we're trying to get in the butt now, right? Because if we keep letting it go, there's the next block to the north is the same housing types. Where they would have the same fencing. And there's another block over in phase 3 that would have the same housing type and the same fencing. And so we don't want it to get, 30 lots deep with the problem. We want to correct it now. So it's not happening in future phases. So right now, in the phases that they're going, they're lowering the fencing down to 3 feet. You can kind of see the situation that's playing out here. They're still building, they're still going forward, they're gonna lower the fences. So then what if we keep the fences high in this block? What happens with the next block? Why do they get the 6-foot fences and we only get 3? I want 6-foot fences now. You can kind of see the dilemma that the city's in here. We either throw safety out the door and go with 6-foot fences, knowing that that's probably not the best idea, or we bring it in, and put the genie back in the bottle and make our code, actually implement the code, if you will, to make it safe for that alley. And I think that's where we're stuck. Where it is that, how do you do that? The code's pretty clear. It's hard to get into the gray area, because the gray area keeps the genie out of the bottle. And once that's out, really hard to protect it. So that's our conversation for another.
Steve, you mentioned that far west that they wanted to do this. There was some expansion in the county. Is that going to affect all commercial outlets in North Plain? What's going on? What is the county trying to implement by April 1st? What's going on?
Oh, in terms of the building code, I do not believe that county wide. It's just
International.
They want. Oh,
yes, and I have not listened to the building code, know exactly what the changes are. But based on a developer telling me they will get submitted, I can only imagine it's the cost of building that building, which is why they want to do it. So it's probably become more strict on certain elements of how those buildings are built.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Steve?
Yeah, I just know this has been tough for Steve. It's been tough for me, but I have more sympathy for Steve. I'm curious though, are any of those 3-foot examples being built right now that we could see what this look in the alleys in the north, like in phase 2? Do you know?
I know that they installed the fence posts, and if you go there right now, the fence posts are 6 feet tall, but they know
Or
that
they're gonna come down?
I walked around the project with them and showed them where it needs to be lowered and how. And on some of the other ones, they actually hold the fencing back. For example, if you go into that project from the east end and corner of the alley where the fence is all the way around that corner there, they didn't do that on the other houses. They pulled that fencing back now. So instead of just being 6 feet, they didn't even go to 3 feet. They just shortened the fencing up so it's all outside of the pure vision now at 6 feet. But then if you go like further down the alley, that is going to be 2 feet. And that's what they're working on right now.
Okay, I was just curious if there's an example to see. Because there's 2 solutions to make it code compliant. It would be leave the fences where they are, lower them to 3 feet, or they can remain 6 feet. They just need to be taken away from the alley to get a little bit more in line with the back of the garage, which is what the pattern book originally said. So, and yeah, but residents don't like either one of those options. So we're working through that. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to throw another dimension to it, the way this whole thing got started was Jeremy Anderson, who came before you at the last meeting to share with you his thoughts. He came to the city to extend his fence around the back of his home. Because Lennar's pen was just out there about 5 feet short or so, maybe even a little bit more. And so he wanted to wrap it around. And I got his application and I said, that's fine, you can do that. But at 3 feet, you gotta do that. And he said, why me? What do I gotta do? Everybody else is 6. So I went over and looked, like, oh my God, we got a problem. So then we kind of like, everybody needs to pause. Let's talk about this. Jeremy wasn't very patient. And on January 19th, he decided to just go forward and extend the fence without getting a permit. I had a feeling he might do that. And so on my lunch, I drove over there on that day. And just happened to catch him extending the fence. And I said, oh, you gotta stop. So we issued a stop work order to him on that day. And so he's now submitted a fence application for just extending it to the end of his home, not into the alley. Which we're fine with. It's not gonna be any worse than the side of his home. So if we stay at 6, with these fences that are there right now, Jeremy will come back. And be like, okay, now I'm gonna extend my fence, that's 6 feet. If you like it, it's 6 feet. So that's another sticking point here that we're talking about.
It's not
But that's the whole story. That is the whole story. That's what the fun part and that's what we do.
Just one more question. So let's just say worst case scenario, the fences go down to 3 feet. For the homeowner, plant some sort of privacy screen on their property line that would potentially grow 6 feet tall, or would that provide a occlusion?
Yeah, but if there is anything in that triangle that is over 3 feet, that would block the division, or it is over 3 feet, that's like a pole. You know, it doesn't have any, like it's a tree that's limbed up or something like that, so you can see, it just can't block the line of sight. So one option they could do is they could pull the fencing back to 6 feet and get it out of that area. But, some of these driveways are so tight that the one division for one driveway comes on and needs to division for the other driveway. You know, and so it's gonna be really challenging. You know, when we get into this situation, one of the first things we want to do is offer options. We don't want to sit there and just make it just one way, you know, but we do get kind of in the box a little bit because that's what it presents.
Any other comments or- Go ahead.
I can't resist. So I'm gonna say this. My opinion is that this body needs to be resolute with enforcement of the code without exception. And I don't see us going any other way. Frankly, it is what it is. Code is law. We make ordinance and law. We are the legislators in this community, and we have a code, and they need to abide by the code, no exceptions. And I just think any other pathway is just a recipe for future disasters that we need to avoid.
Thank you. I do appreciate that support, and I hope that everybody else was that way too, because I think at the end of the day, what we're looking at here, we don't want to ruin anybody's life. It's not what we're trying to do. We're simply trying to protect the city interest and make that LA city. And if you want to see a video about how clear vision works, I got a video I can share with you that when you have the line of sight block, even at very slow speeds, that happens. So if you want to see it, let me know. I'll send it to you guys out on and share it with the mayor. It's a real item.
It is. If I watched it twice and both times, I don't jump. Yeah, it's not good. And especially, you know, granted my kids are, you know, adults now, but I have a grandkid and I think about everybody else with little kids on bikes and skateboards and things like that. We have to look out for them, right? We have to, and some of those families over there have little children, right? And they really need to be thinking about the safety of their children. You know, Coyote's gonna jump a 3-foot fence to get a dog no matter what. I mean, I'm sorry, right? But a kid's life is more important to me. I'm sorry, I think you're doing the right thing. I know it's a tough position to be in. I know you're trying to work with the homeowners. And I know you're trying to work with Lennar, and it's very disappointing that Lennar is not stepping up and taking responsibility for this as well. So, but I know that you're doing the best that you can, and you've got my support.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yeah, you know, one of the things that you do look at this video, one of the things you'll see is we have some scenarios.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I don't need a video, I just, and I would share it, like, yeah, I edit it, I see this group that come and figure it out. Yeah, it's needed a purpose of.
Yeah, and just to go a little bit further, you know, if we did allow those 6 feet fences, those 6 foot fences to stay up without amending our code, if there was a situation, it's coming to the city. So you either amend the code to allow something like this, or you don't and enforce it.
Thanks. Bill?
Good evening, everyone. I'll go through highlights. We've had time to review. The general fund is basically operating within or below budget. Number of the budget numbers in the report that we talk about each month, that's kind of the remaining budget after the first year of the biennial, and so what's left over from the first year is put into the second year. So everything you're seeing is, kind of budget truly through the end of the biennium on June 30th. So the general fund is continuing to operate well within or below budget on most everything. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but really the only category or departments that's seen expenditures above budget has really been community development, and that's largely been UGB planning and dealing with UGB process with the state. So that's just wrapped up expenses that were almost impossible to predict. But then again, the UGB where it is now would never have been predicted. So in some it's paid off. Being very careful and planning very carefully and legally. So that will be, community development will definitely be a topic in the supplemental budget on March 16th and come back to you. So we'll come back with a proposed new revised budget for that particular department and professional services in particular. But the rest of the general fund departments are operating pretty well with work at or below budget. Nothing exciting in the streets fund during the month of January to report. Top revenues, particularly from businesses, are coming in as planned. We had one more business ask questions about why the fees were changed the way they were during the month of January, and we visited with that business owner, so things are going okay on that front. The water fund have operated within budget and doing well during the month of January. We're in a slower winter month on water revenue, so water use and water purchases, so that's to be expected. As far as overdue balances, aging balance status, the HOAs that I've been discussing over the past few months, inexplicably having overdue balances were all paid down during the month of January. So we're back down to a somewhat normal month. We're back down to somewhat normal levels after the month of January with balances being paid down. So our biggest outstanding aging balance right now is one of our industrial businesses is behind by about $450. So that's way better than homeowner association being over by $5,000. So January was a really nice month in pay downs of overdue balances. So overdue water funds we're doing kind of performed well. We saw some success in January of things being paid down. Capital funds. This month I have a summary of the last 4 months. I didn't have the summary in for January report. So this is a 4-month report on where the capital funds are and their balances. And so I report kind of the different highlights. Really kind of the STCs and TDTs from Brimhill are significant. That's one of the big bullet points. But we did provide them a credit during the last month. Of nearly $1 million for a bunch of improvements put in place for transportation, water, and parks. Our engineers reviewed all of that, verified it in detail, and so they successfully got all of these credits. And that was in January. So just kind of one thing that's happened. The Urban Renewal Agency, in terms of its property tax revenue this year, about $725,000 has come in for the Urban Renewal Agency. And yet still a little bit below the forecast for the fiscal year. We're hoping to hit the target. I don't know that we will, but we're going to come close. Those are kind of the two big stories I would say on the capital funds. And then moving forward, we'll have a few projects or things in the supplemental budget that will come to you on March 6th, including some of the money that we got from ARPA. We didn't budget for, including what's gone out here for park improvement. That'll be part of it. So March 6th, we'll have that supplemental budget before you, and it'll just kind of fill in all the blanks. Haven't had to do one really in a while, the way the biennial budget has been done, and it's kind of nice, but everything's kind of been on target for the most part for the last year and a half, so it's worked out pretty well. And then finally, I would just bring to your attention the budget committee schedule. I'm sure you all saw it, but just kind of wanted to put forth that we have kind of have an unusual process this year. March 6th in the work session, we're gonna talk about kind of the higher elevation. What are we planning for in the next biennium? What issues are in play? What kind of big projects are coming up? What does the levy do for us if it does or doesn't pass? So we're actually going to be, the budget committee is actually going to take a look at 2 different budgets this year, given it the scenario if the levy passes versus what do we have to budget for if the levy doesn't pass. So April 13th, it will be the first official budget committee meeting to talk about the new budgets, the 2 scenarios. And then April 19th and May 3rd, we have scheduled the follow-up potential additional 1 and 2 meetings. And then on May 24th, we're going to come back because that Wednesday is the first Wednesday after the May 16th election. And the budget committee, knowing what the results will be of the election, will on that evening make their recommendation to you for what budget they recommend you pass for the biennium, given the outcome of the election. And then we have June 5th scheduled for your meeting to take up the budget recommendation. And with that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sloan?
I've got 2. Do we know how the house of the solar there? For budget meetings? Kind of what we're looking for, percent of the month.
Councilor, that's a very good question. Last month, we visited with Lennar to go over their growth expectations. Actually, the property tax forecast for the new biennium, for the new budget year, the next 2 budget years are done because we visited with them back in January. We kind of saw what their growth expectations are. My recollection is that they have built a total of 100 homes or are close to being done, having built 100 homes. And 60 of them, as I recall, have been purchased and or occupied at this point. So those were the statistics last month. I don't have a sales number for this month, but I do have new water accounts established at occupancy. So I can bring that number to you each month if you would like that. It would kind of help to see where we're headed.
It has with us too. Washington County, a year ago, it was $31 million deficit. This year is 2025. Beaverton has $10 million deficit. And so I think this budget process, we don't want to be where we don't fit.
I would agree with you. One thing I will relay after hearing in detail about the county's budget woes, they budgeted and spent a lot of money on staffing and programs based on one-time revenues, grants, and other non-sustained kind of permanent revenues. And that's something that this city has avoided doing. So I would be shocked if we have any of the problems that they do or are having to deal with. Their property tax roll went up 5% last year. Like they actually saw 5% growth, but they're cutting over in the opposite direction because they did permanent type spending with one-time revenue. And it's really important.
It's not just a one-year thing too. Like you said, it was last year was even bigger. They're finding it's been kind of a longitudinal problem spanning many years. And I think some things have kind of come to a head. So with bigger infrastructure, bigger projects, bigger budgets, maybe bring bigger problems too. We have the ability to have a much better handle on what our fiscal situation is going to be, where I think we're fortunate there, right? And some of these, there's a lot of homeless costs and things like that they have to take on, and there's no revenue source coming from that other than a bit of the Metro bond dollars and some of the ARPA funding, but that stuff evaporated quickly. So we have a simpler puzzle to put together, and for that I'm fortunate. A lot of similar issues, so I think, yeah.
That's a fiscal issue.
Any other comments or questions?
I was going to mention that, gas tax rate is 70% for the budget. So with that being said, we should have this exposed down in our 10%, how do we do that? Where do you know, oh, I mean, you have to really look at the, general experience, just not to be forecast as, I don't want to see what you're going to do. So, a lot of forecast we have, every month. That's why it's part of the forecasting is really looking at now. And I know our being smaller, so smaller numbers can smaller. Big numbers. But, you know, special, which is really, you have to be, conservative. You have to be,
Well, I appreciate our conservative nature, and I think we've done a great job doing the biennial budget. It'll be interesting to see the competitive nature between the renamed gas station, Space Station, and the Arcos. I've noticed that the pricing is a little more competitive across the bridge as opposed to across the street. So that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. And then just a side note, I appreciate the use of the email, and I want to thank you for providing me with all that information to me today. So I think that's the also.
My brother.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir. So we have resolution 2217. And that's the resolution of the city council of the city of North Plains, Oregon, appointing Chris Barron to be a member of the North Plains Budget Committee for a 4-year term. Any comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2217.
I'll move to approve resolution 2217, the resolution of the city of North Plains, Oregon, appointing Chris Barron to be a member of the North Plains Budget Committee for a 4-year term.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. Andy, city manager report.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple things. We received 8 bids last week for the CMGC for the Public Works Building. And we scored all of those over the weekend. We have 3 that we're going to interview this week on Thursday. And at the March 6th meeting, we'll have, the plan is to have a recommended contractor to go with to the council for a contract approval. So that was good. That was quite a number of bids and some really strong ones too. So there's that. And then I guess the other thing of note is, yes, we were just talking about our conservative nature, but sometimes we have to be a little aggressive and be willing to expend a bit of funds to kind of secure an economic future. So we're really following what's happening at this semiconductor committee, the Joint Committee on Semiconductors. The mayor, Bill, and I went to Salem last week and we met with many members of that committee. We're continuing to meet with folks. We're doing a tour for Wyden staff and the county's lobbyists this week of North Plains. We're reaching out to the governor's office, and I'm entertaining engaging a lobbyist of some sort to advocate on our behalf in Salem, because we have no boots on the ground there, and many cities do. And we have a generational opportunity right now from the work that this committee is doing. And I at least want to talk to somebody that is a registered lobbyist that knows our issues and can speak on North Plains issues to legislators, to folks in the governor's office, to basically anyone that will listen in Salem, because there's a lot of activity happening quickly, and we just don't have a representation there. We don't even have elected representation that knows North Plains. Senator Weber is a very nice woman. She's capable, she's smart. I'm sure she's hardworking, but she barely knows North Plains because she became our senator just last month. And the representative that currently is elected to represent North Plains is not on any committees. So just on those facts alone, we're behind the 8 ball. So we have some catching up to do to make sure that we remain in the game for what this committee is talking about. Because if North Plains is one of the sites selected to be the large R&D or fab facility, that brings a lot of benefits to the rest of the community. And that's what we're really trying to focus on. There's a lot of infrastructure and other economic benefits that flow to everyone that lives here now, not just planning ahead for the future. So I really want to make sure that we're being advocated for, and we're being heard in that. There's only so much that we can do. Our economic development staff in Plains is the 2 of us, and then the mayor when she has time. Other cities have people there constantly, and they have a lobbyist there. So I'm making the choice to do what we can to engage someone. We'll spend a few bucks now to hopefully get a lot of that back later.
And we talked to, when we were there on Monday, we talked to other folks as well, and we've been engaging on the phone and via email, other senators and representatives, but like Andy said, it would be really helpful to actually have, a lobbyist on boots on the ground, being ears and eyes and a voice for us. Because it takes a lot of time, effort, and folks are aware, and we have other people that are familiar with North Plains and our situation, but then we're going to advocate. So we really need somebody there to really do some of the hard work for us. So I support those efforts, and hopefully we'll be the benefactor of some pretty good things down the road. So a lot of work. It's been pretty interesting as well. So thank you, Andy and Bill, for all of the hard work. Really appreciate that.
Last thing I will say, thanks for getting the flowers, Lori. Thanks for everyone supporting the police department and Conway. Happy trails to you. So it's been great having you here. To the mayor's comment earlier, it did remind me, when you started, my son was 4 at that time, and he goes, he was sing. That was back in the days when they say it's just crazy stuff, cracks you up. But you came in and he was like, why is she wearing a police outfit? So I had just a chance to have a really good conversation. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, the snakes. Yep. Yeah. Strike that from the record.
Any comments, questions? Any council reports? Council vote?
I went to WCC, and
Thank you.
there were it's very non-voting role, and there's a lot of talk about the goals. There's a lot of goals. People are worried about hospice roles, and those who work on Tiger and 99, they all very exposed to this kind of thing. And the people that are listening to us could be across the street or without concern about it. That's going to be the main $100 there. I took a tour for the Washington Public Grounds. They're looking at these buildings because we walked on the building and some other buildings. So they're out looking for new buildings in Washington. Tickets for one. They're, pretty big building, so. Gonna get that. And, I'm teaching fourth grade is required, I don't think they're mentioning engineering. Doing engineering. And the national. Representing.
Any other council reports?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
So I attended ex officio 3 meetings, planning commission first off. They did a minor modification on the Bryn Hill, basically associated with the impact in construction of the northbound left turn lane at North Avenue and Glendale, where it goes towards Shady Brook, if you're headed basically eastbound on North Avenue. So essentially what they did is in the modification, they made a change from occupancy to actually when the 248 or maybe 249 building permit is issued, then they'll time it. It's going to be ending up earlier than what, in other words, would be when the occupancy occurs. So it probably timelines in their schedule better, the weather and all of those kinds of things. It was approved unanimously. There wasn't really too much more discussion at the meeting. There was an extension for the church, but in their effort to potentially bring something forward, their expansion plans. Parks and Rec was the next one, and there was no quorum, so there was some discussion, but no action, no meeting officially, and really there was some discussion about where things were at with Jesse Mays, what was upcoming maybe for concerts in the park, where the budget was at, and the folks in attendance had that information. So along those lines, I think everything's they seem to be not disjointed, but for whatever reason they didn't have all their folks with them on that evening. The of course discussion about the 60th anniversary and during the ice cream social, that's obviously happening. There's a lot in play there for that to happen, but just general discussion. In other words, the only thing they probably stipulated was they'd like to have a dog park, or everybody wants to have a dog park, but maybe we'll get there. I don't know. Library board, most of that was covered in Robin's report. However, I did get to meet Nandu, who is basically a recommendation that will come before this body on the 6th of March for approval, and the other one being Larry Gonzalez. Most of you folks probably know Larry. He also served on the council, so he's a good candidate, and he's going to he's in other words traveling to be there to participate in that process. So when he gets back, that'll happen, and he'll be at a later date. But all in all, good discussion about the change in not, well, maybe it's the leadership, but the leadership of the Friends. And I think there's a lot of renewed energy, and I think there'll be some additional activity. Part of that was in regards to the questions on the revenue sources. I know they got a pretty healthy EED collection in that probably attributed to those numbers they put in pretty big. So for their revenue, and I think they seem to be pretty aggressive on that front. And then they did mention that apparently it's appliances or something that still needs to get moved from the yellow house out to
Senior
the
center.
pantry.
Senior
Center. And so they were trying to figure out how to make that happen. I'm not sure why the city can't help make that happen, but
We are.
okay, that doesn't surprise me. But it was a pretty good night of information. Robin went into some of the discussion on her day in Salem that she spent at the legislature, as well as what, revenue shortfalls were going to be anticipated based on the county's budget cuts. So, we're hoping we can find a way to come up, with that money. I can't imagine we can't. I don't see how we can't make that work. That's going to be what happens, at our budget, actual budget deliberations as we go forward. But other than that, I did have, not a lot to report on the Metropolitan Area Communications Commission, but you may or may not know that there is basically loggerheads, if you will, between Ziply Fiber and the 15 jurisdictions. It affects only really 11. We're not included in that because we don't have a franchise agreement with Ziply Fiber. But all 15 jurisdictions have to approve the extension of the contract because that was stipulated in the purchase agreement with, I believe it was Frontier, pretty sure it was Frontier Communications. So the consensus of the board is to extend up to 3 years. I prefer only 2, that we get that contract in place. And I think legally they're trying to play hardball, but there's a way to play hardball and it's to grab it back. So we'll see. We're just going to have to go after it, and I think the administrators pretty much on top of that. So we won't see that at this body for at least 2 years, maybe 3. Other than that, everything else is pretty quiet on the communications front, and that's my report.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Who was the Parks Board? Did they have 2 members and 2 applicants?
They did, but they couldn't act because they had no quorum to act. So they'll be able to do that at the upcoming meeting.
Actually, yeah, so there was a vacancy from one member that moved out of state. And then, Chair Nunnenkamp contacted the other 2 that haven't attended a meeting in the last year.
That's my question.
And the one has stepped back because she just can't make the commitment. So that's another vacancy. So that's 2 vacancies. And last I talked to him, he had not heard from the other person, but I think if he doesn't hear from him, the Parks members will vote to pull him off of there. So we will end up with 3 vacancies, and we actually have at this point 4 applicants. So we can fill it at the March meeting. If there's 4.
How's that work? If you've got a quorum, who doesn't show up, how do you get a quorum? Can we use some kind of action to when a month go there to?
No, the quorum, you have to have at least half your members there, and if you don't, you can have discussions, you can't make any decisions.
Active members?
Pardon me?
You have active members?
They, half of the members that are, no, I mean, of the board that's in place.
Yeah.
So there's 7 members on the park board, you have to have 4 of them there to have a quorum.
Even if there's only 3? Well, I mean, it's the same, because I've been in October and one in January, 2 people that you're talking about, were not at either one of them, and then you lost the way.
Right, that still leaves 4 members. So you still, I mean, if all 4 of those show up, you've got a quorum, they can appoint at the next meeting people to fill the 3 vacancies out of the 4 applicants.
Do you know the process to make it active members, people that are actually showing up there? So we get a quorum of half, let's say there's 7 people that is on charter. 2 of them are MIA. There's 4. Is there a way to have it so there's 4 people that are actually active, 2 members that actually do it?
No, the city charter says it's the members that are on the board. Active or not, they're still considered board members.
And there's no members.
We'd have to change the city charter.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any
And
prescribed.
no,
way
there's
to do
there's
that.
nothing that you can do at that point. Now, Don Weber's normally there, he was out of town. And so Patty was there and Doug Nunningham, the chair, and then Evan King, who was always there, didn't show up and didn't tell us he wasn't gonna be there, so I'm not sure what was with him, he's always there, there's always 4 members there.
Yeah.
Always. So I'm confident that at the March meeting, they will get 3 people appointed. to fill those vacancies.
Thank you, Council, Sheldon, for your reports on the committees. We're looking at the rest of the schedule, or we're looking for the schedule in March. Councilor Smith of the ECDA, Councilor Fagan and Parks and Rec, Councilor Fagan, Planning Commission, and then I will be attending the Parks Board, so. The Senior Center, is having their fountain this Saturday. Hopefully some of you, all of you will be able to attend. And then you've already purchased your tickets, that would be great. And then also please make sure that you cancel this on the time this on the calendar, because the stadium's the address would be March 23rd at 6 o'clock here at Justin Miller's. And anybody else have anything else?
I forgot, I was gonna ask about the congregation of tree cutting trucks on the old Watts property, but I didn't know, like, it's been there several days. If they had our permission to be there, or I don't know, if it was for a while.
Yeah, they were just gonna be there for a week for a job, and they're doing some favors for us in exchange for that. Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, I'll go ahead and close our city council meeting now at 3:27. Thank you, everyone.